SaharaTV, welcome back. I hope you've been enjoying what we've been talking about so far. We've talked about so many interesting topics. We talked about female genital mutilation. We talked about Nigeria with the case of the CEC boss, Ms. Aruma Ote. And we also are talking about homosexuality. But today we have another guest that I want to introduce some of you to. Now, many of our Nigerian viewers, you may already know this guy, but he is here live in our New York studio, and I just want him to introduce himself.
My name is Odewale. That is me.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So you are a social media activist. That's the way to describe you. So I just want to find out from you, why do you use social media to communicate with the people of Nigeria?
I think I'm more than a social media activist. I think I'm a strict activist, and I only got to start to use social media when it became a fad. My interaction or connection with social media dates back to 2004, I think, with Facebook. Then I had some colleagues that I worked with in Denmark. They introduced me to Facebook, and since then it's been, no going back. And initially it started like a recreational stuff or something to while away time. But over time, it started to, certain events in the country, in the political space, started to shape the kind of contributions that one made. And I think it's brought me a certain level of, affiliations, contacts, and, a number of people know me more on social media than even in real life.
Exactly.
And many of the people that I connect with on social media, I don't know them, personally, or I've not met them physically.
So you have many thousands of virtual relationships.
Yes, I do, and now I feel some kind of connection to them, beyond the usual. Sometimes I go beyond even the social media to check on them, if I don't see them. So the connection is becoming even more sentimental at times. And some of them, I look out for them. Some of them, I try to reach out to them. Beyond the political, activism that we do on social media, we tend to connect beyond that.
Okay.
Sometimes we even like BBM contact, telephone calls, SMS. But usually it's difficult to meet with them. But we try to keep in touch one way or the other.
So let's look at the evolution of social media, especially in the Nigerian context. Facebook started in 2004. I don't know what you were doing, but I was a freshman in college. People were posting up their party photos, this and that. I'm sure in Nigeria as well. When it caught up in Nigeria, they were posting just friendly type of things. So when do you think things actually change? When did Facebook and Twitter become a tool for change in Nigeria?
Well, I'm not, I don't think I'm competent enough to put a timestamp on that. But what I know is that the political consciousness started to spread over the country, one, because of the nature of governance that we have. And then you had this new wave of young people who got angry, and usually they didn't have space. The entire physical political space seems to be gagged. So the social media platform then became that space, that alternative space for them, to vent some of this anger, the pent-up anger. It became that the avenue, the platform became the avenue to vent that anger, and then a lot of them saw it as a cheap, accessible, and free means to do that and to connect with their colleagues, even within and sometimes people don't know how close they can be, but through social media they've been able to connect, and then the amount of zeal, the amount of energy, the amount of creativity that has come out of that, has been amazing. It's been amazing. And I mean, the resources that would have been required to go physically, to organize meetings, to meet one another is not there. So that social media offered the platform, the opportunity for people to meet and then to connect, and of course to engage the political space. And I tell you, the political space is really, really feeling that heat from that.
That's true, especially with Occupy Nigeria. Now, me being based in New York City, I follow the entire movement, the revolution, online, on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. And you're actually on ground. So can you just give us a sense of how people were watching what's happening on the streets and going to tweet about it and putting it on their BlackBerries? Just tell me about that process.
I think Occupy Nigeria is just like a fallout of other engagements that had happened. The nature of usage of the social media platforms during the election was also amazing, and I think it needs to be referenced. My usage of social media in elections started in 2009 during the rerun election in Ekiti, and we were like having real-time updates of what was happening at the different polling units, and we're pushing it out. Again, we repeated the same thing in Anambra, because there weren't many people in Anambra, during the elections. There weren't many observers, international observers. So social media platform offered the means to reach out to the external world. And I realized, then in Anambra, the BBC actually got my contact and called me, to ask me about what was happening. They got that connection through my updates on Facebook and Twitter. And since that time, there has been no, looking back. And people have used it in different elections. They run elections in Delta in January 2011, and then the general elections itself. And it's, opened up the space, to more popular participation than we used to have before. It, allowed people who, usually would not be interested in that kind of engagement to, participate, to contribute. And then it shaped up the, scope of political discourse, even leading to the 2011 elections. And you have, those who want to abscond, like the president not coming for the, youth platform, what about us debate. It was as a result of some of the kind of, expressions, engagement, and comments on social media that, they actually got a pointer to the fact that don't go there.
Exactly. So that shows that governments are also watching what we're talking about.
Yes, they are watching. And I think that was, the use of social media during the Occupy Nigeria protest was just, a fallout of that which had been built up over time. And again, the experience watching the colleagues in the Arab world, how they used Facebook and Twitter to really upturn the long-term sitting government in those countries, I think was what many of Nigerian young people had to adopt to use to spread the information. Again, one uniqueness of what social media contributed to the Occupy Nigeria protest was the fact that people need not be structured. They need not be organized. From social media, the coordination started, and people, from by virtue of getting information of what was happening in other places, could organize themselves and organize their own small communities. And you had pockets of protests within communities building up to large ones that you have. A lot of people in the outside world knew about what happened in Ojota, in Kano, in Kaduna, in Abuja, but there were other smaller groups that weren't really wouldn't have been identified if not for social media. People tweeting and hashtagging Occupy Nigeria, fuel subsidy. That was how, if you look at the crowd sourcing map, that that beyond the protest at Ojota, there's one around Ketu streets, off-street side protest. That
it was amazing. You're right.
It was. Yeah.
Did you think it was part of something bigger, a bigger revolution?
I think it was part of something bigger, and I think the revolution is coming in bits. I also think that
I like that. Revolution is coming in bits.
It is coming in bits. And I think the government actually saw that, and that is why they actually had to blackmail, the protesters, into submission. And they blackmailed them at different levels, blackmailed labor, blackmailed the protesters, blackmailed the opposition. And I think the experience would offer those who really want that revolution, those who want change, to better revamp and organize themselves for future actions. So the government needs to watch out for that.
You said that there's no going back. You have thousands of Facebook friends and so forth, but also social media, it has a way of putting your life out in the public. So do you feel like you need to watch yourself, or obviously people are getting in trouble on Twitter and Facebook, so how do you feel about that?
I think it's something that is difficult, particularly if you are carefree, and there's too much amount of information about the individual out there, that now just a Google search can bring out the entire life credential of anybody. So what I do is, over time, I adopted some netiquette, what I call netiquette, about how to engage on social media, what kind of information I want out there. And sometimes I just take my time, go back and look at my own history. I Google myself to know that I have, the information I have out there is something that would not, implicate me in any form.
That's very smart, very smart.
I mean, I had to do that, and it's about management, and you really need to know what you want to put out there. You need to be conscious of that, and people need to define how they want to use, social media, because it can get you into trouble, but it can also get you a lot of opportunities.
Exactly. Leading to my next question, do you think social media is a way to remain anonymous, or is it actually putting yourself out there? Do you think you're really anonymous? Because you said you have thousands of, fans, so that's kind of a complex question, but is it anonymous, or do people actually know who you are? Can the government target you because of your tweets?
I think they can if they want to. I won't underrate their capacity to do that. And I know those who know me, and some even have my, picture. Perhaps certain acquaintances that I've been very close to in the past can just, I know this guy, I can, pinpoint him to you. We have Judas in the multitude. So,
oh, wow.
I'm not going to, hide under the pretext that I don't have a picture out there that they don't know me.
That's another thing. There are many people on Twitter, saying that they're activists, they're, all this stuff, but they're actually watching to see what you're tweeting to be able to report back to the government. Can you talk about this? Because many people are naive about this reality.
Yeah, they are. And I think actually because of the kind of engagements that I've had, what I see sometimes when people tweet at me or challenge me on anything I do is like, this guy has been avowed, has been vocal against this government, now he's in government, let's go at him. Sometimes it can be, it can get you angry, because of the kind of question people ask, because sometimes the questions already presupposes that a decision has been taken, and again, the Nigerian populace seems to be cynical now. A lot of people don't believe that when you go into government or when you're in government, you can say the truth or you can be honest.
And disenchanted.
Yes, so, and you can't blame them for that. The government has to take responsibility for the way people react to it. So it is almost on the government to provide information, to be as transparent as much as possible, to be as accountable to the people as much as possible. And I'm sure the people are not totally rigid. If they see a government that is pliable to their yearnings, that is committed to good governance at all levels, I'm sure the people will respond positively to that. So I try as much as possible to leave it, in my everyday, in my tweets, in my Facebook updates, in what I do, even one-to-one, my interactions with people. I try to leave it because, my own incursion into activism was not by chance. I think over time I've had some kind of philosophical immersion, which has really helped me.
Okay.
So I'm not, when I get into government, I didn't change. And even people in government sometimes ask me and feel like, am I for government or am I for the people in this street? And I say, well, I'm for good governance.
You can be for both, right? You can infiltrate from within.
I am actually for good governance, and I'm sure the man who has appointed me to my position knows that, and I think he appreciates that. Sometimes I can be an irritant. He appreciates it.
Okay, my final question. What is your assessment of the current political situation in Nigeria?
I think I'll summarize that in some tweets that I posted some time ago, about a week or so now, that Nigeria is in dire straits. And we really, really need to take positive, deliberate, and concrete actions to bring it back. Otherwise, it's on the precipice. And there are certain things that are not told to the people that, out there or inside there, I think I'll just liken it to the recent op-ed, by the former vice president of Goldman Sachs. A lot of information in government that people don't know about, that when they do, the backlash is better imagined.
Wow. Very well stated. Well, thank you so much for joining us on Sahara. Of course, we want to have you back. Welcome. You're always welcome onto our studio here in New York City.
Pleasure.
All right, so viewers, that was Mr. Odewale. He is with us in New York in our studios. He was talking to us about this new growing movement that is centered on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter, on Flickr, whatever. We call it social media. And it's happening not just in Nigeria, but throughout Africa. It's really sparking change. We like this change. If it's for progressive democracy, we want it. So stay tuned onto SaharaTV. Up next, we are talking about this whole Joseph Kony Invisible Children debacle. We know the news. We know what's been happening. So we're going to have a very interesting conversation. Also, we're going to have more of your Skype calls. We want to hear your comments. So stay tuned onto SaharaTV.
Now introducing Dr. Njakare Damadi.
You are listening to Simpiwe Dana from South Africa with the song Ilo Ilo. Hello, you're watching Sahara TV. It's Saturday, March 17, 2012. It's time for AfriCurrent. This is the part of the show when we give you a snapshot of what's happening in Africa. Some of these stories